So we have a bit of a different kind of tutorial today. I am going to show you how I prepare panels for painting. So kind of looking at alternate surfaces, also gessoing a piece of paper because that can give you some alternate surface as well, and you can do things with paper and create textures on paper that you can't necessarily do with canvas or panel for that matter. I'm also going to demo using a palette knife and some things that are more about creating texture than actually just using a brush, so you get kind of different marks and strokes and a way to lay paint on. I'm also going to take you on a little bit of a tour of my back wall where I have the more abstract works that I'm working on or finished pieces. I do have them up because I had them up for a show, an open studio type thing. So it gives me the opportunity to kind of give you a bit of a studio walkthrough as well. Okay, so again, little materials focused, mark making focus, really piggybacks on a lot of the mark making exercises that I'm having you do. And again, not, some of the paint that I'm choosing today, it's just not going to be specific. Just pick some colors, put them together, that sort of thing. Kind of have fun with it. But you're really going to get to dip into surfaces, materials, and a little bit of abstraction in this one. Okay, so let me go take you on that tour. So this is a bit of an overview of what's on the wall, and then I will zoom in to discuss some different things. There's a range of techniques here. Up the top, there's a little bit more drawing and watercolor involved. Here is oil painting and acrylic, all of those. Giving a bit of a landscapey feel, kind of move in, zoom in there. So you can get a sense of a space here. It's not completely abstract. Whereas this one is very non-representational, really has to do with line and shape. Anything that you're getting from this image is what you're feeling or what you're trying to see. When working with stuff like this, I usually start with a wash on the surface and I let the layers build. So you can really see here that I allowed the underpainting to kind of develop, and then layered on top of that, both scraped away and layered, but I let a lot of the underpainting stay revealed because that's part of the language of the piece. I kept the colors really close here and kind of muted because that was the palette that I wanted. Here, I'm actually trying to refer to that silvery glow after a storm. It's a bit of a lake light. I feel like this does have some landscape elements in it, a little bit more, let's see, indicative of a space, but still not a real space. Again, guided very much by the mark making, underpainting, layering, okay? Again, if you look closely here, started with a wash. This is pretty much all oil. And then really let my brush flow with line work, kind of having fun with it, playing, almost scribbling to some degree, and then standing back and looking at the shapes that were created and what I wanted to develop from that. What I want to leave as a focal point or area of more congestion, activity, and then things that I like to leave still and calm and open. So when composing with abstraction, sometimes almost it's more formal in the sense that you really have to understand how the eye travels so that you can leave the piece being engaging. It was based on a drawing that I have here, so a lot of times I paint in watercolor and then expand. This one up here does still kind of have a bit of a landscapey feel. I feel like there's a background, middle ground, and foreground. But any recognizable elements can easily be dismantled into abstraction. Again, kind of building up with shape and color and then picking out different areas and focal points that I wanted there, okay? So kind of give you the overview of a wall. Again, this was for an open studio show, so it's presented gallery style, and you get kind of a feel of the range of abstraction, mark making, value, and use of color in these works. So now I'm going to move the tour to the surface prep station. This is one of my favorite parts of painting, is really playing with surfaces, controlling the surfaces. So sometimes I demo from pre-prepared, something that maybe I didn't gesso, that's fine. But I really do find a joy in getting the work ready from scratch. Panel I really love. It's a very slick and sleek surface. If you like to have smooth textures, if you're somebody who likes to glaze, if you work representationally, this is some of the ways to get fine details. But even abstractly, this is a way to get a real range of surface texture. This is what they look like raw without gesso. That's how panels usually come to you. I ordered these ones on Amazon. They smell fresh. I just opened up the package. This one is from Blick. You can see, I believe this is a better pine. These were a little pricier, and the finish on them is a little bit smoother, textured, treated. These kind of feel raw, but I'm okay with that. You can sand them down and, you know, do multiple coats. Over here, I have some Arches watercolor paper. It has a nice texture. I will tape that down before I put gesso on it because that will buckle. And some of the other supplies that I have, sandpaper, sanding in between layers is important. Palette knife, I'm actually gonna put my paint, you can see there's paint underneath on the table itself here, so this is just a bit of a mess. But a lot of times, for the most part, I actually use just a heavy glass with a treated edge. You know, sometimes I find these things around, sometimes hardware stores have them. And remember, you don't want a raw edge, so you cut yourself. So either tape that off or you get some sort of beveled edge. And this is really great for oil painting. You can just kind of keep a palette around all the time. And then I use a palette scraper. Again, you can order these on Amazon or get them at the hardware store. It's a knife, and you get a series of blades, and you can scrape your palette and keep it clean. Okay, brought out some brushes and then also a palette knife, okay, and a range of tools. I got this with some kit of brushes that I bought. It has these kind of jagged edges, smooth edges. It was just kind of an extra thing, and some other brush kit that I bought, so I kept those. Those are fun. Palette knives with kind of different tips to them, and then some other tools, this like fork-like tool, things like that. So you kind of collect these things that have different ways that you can dig into paint. This is my big thing of, oh, wait, this is polymer medium. I'll have to go grab the gesso. It's very similar to gesso though. I got this from Nova Color. Hold on. Yes, actually no. This is the gesso. That's amazing. I thought I had a big gallon of titanium white. That's not true. Yes, so this is a polymer medium, so this can be used as a gesso. I got this at Nova Color. It's actually really, really nice. You can see that I've used it a couple times. I'm gonna take you on a little journey, and I have another, and let's go down here. This is my Studio Series gesso that I get at Blick. It says Utrecht, but it's not. But you can still buy Utrecht brand at Blick. And you want to get the nicer gesso. When you do that, I'm gonna back up here, go on a little tour. You want to get the nicer gesso when you buy it in those gallons at the store, because otherwise it's a little bit too thin and hard to apply. Okay, so anyway, it took me off for a second, but this is a ground. It's Nova Color's version of that. Okay, so Nova Color, they're here in, if you're Los Angeles based, Nova Color, that's the brand. They are based in Culver City. They make some of the finest acrylic paint in the world. And they also make mediums and grounds and things like that. So now I'll switch to an overhead angle, and you'll kind of watch me prepare these surfaces. Like I said, you like to put kind of a ground on the panels. You can use just your basic acrylic gesso. You can use a clear gesso. You can use black. I'm going with a white primer today, and you can kind of see how it goes on. I'm going to put that on the paper as well. And then for my pre-prime panel, I'm just going to go ahead and play around with some mark making with the palette knife, so you can kind of see some techniques there, like how can I use the palette knife. Also, with preparing a ground, you can scratch into that too and give it some texture before you start painting on it. Just really depends on what you want. Okay, so I actually opted for a general workstation angle. Basically, my overhead is a little occupied with another filming activity right now. So what I'll do is I'll kind of walk you through what I'm doing here. So you'll see, and I kind of hold it up, right? So you see I have a lot of different panels going on. So, big bin of gesso. The other thing that I have, bin of water, and then a lot of people have different opinions on gesso brushes. I tend to get a softer kind of utility brush. I don't spend a lot of money on a fancy gesso brush. A lot of my reasoning for that is the same as my reasoning for everything else. They kind of get decayed and damaged. You can only preserve these things so much. You know, you might in your collection, if you're somebody who prepares your surfaces a lot, you might just have one really nice gesso brush that you use. But for the most part, I have a softer utility brush. The main reason why you would ever get an expensive gesso brush is because you don't want to see any marks on the surface, and that a lot of that has to do with more portrait painting and things like that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pull this out. I'm actually going to pause this for a second because this one is a little bit. I just opened it up and it's a little bit. It needs to be watered down. Like sometimes this gets a seal on it, so I'm either going to use this one or I'm going to switch over. I have another gesso that's a little bit fresher and I'll use that one. Okay, so just pausing. Okay, Liquitex to the rescue. The other thing that I wanted to bring out while I was doing this is PVA size, if you can see that there. I know it's backwards for the video, but this actually is for canvas, linen, paper, things like that. I might actually do this for the paper over here just for fun so you see what it looks like. And this will seal it. It kind of tightens things up and seals them at the same time. So you can see behind me, these are paintings that were done on bed sheets, and I had to use a lot of this PVA size so it didn't get all wrinkly and too loose on the stretcher bars. Okay, so this is something that helps if you ever stretch your own canvas, makes it tighter. Okay, for those of you who've stretched your own canvas, you know what I'm talking about there. Okay, so I'm gonna get that acrylic polymer medium, this one, this ground. I'm gonna close that up and check that later because it might be older than I thought it was. Sometimes we have extra things in our studio that we forgot about. So I'm gonna switch again, just Liquitex. It's a small, what is it? A pint of gesso. Now, you saw that I had my glass table, okay? I'm just gonna squirt that right on there, okay? And then take my gesso brush, and I will hold this up when I'm done, but I am basically just covering my panel. This particular gesso, if you can see the consistency here, it's not too thick, okay? It's really operating like paint right now. Pull that up, as you can see here. Like that. And it has to be kind of a thin-ish coat. You don't want to put it on too thickly. So I'm going to do that one more time. You can see it's a big brush. It's really only one. Thin strokes. Use a little bit of water if you need it. If you don't need it, keep it out. It's kind of best not to thin down your gesso. Let me just grab this real quick and see. Okay, and you can see on the table, that's what that looks like. Okay, so there you go. There's a little handle on this, so that's helpful. Okay. Let me move that back so you can get more of a. As I adjust the arm around, it's almost like it's a tripod, but it's acting like a selfie stick at the same time. Okay, so that's what I'm doing here. I'm just going ahead through all of these, keeping the gesso kind of thin. Again, see? And what I'll do, now I also do recommend, this is why I do this on a flat table, I do recommend doing the sides, okay? Now you can see my regular painting brushes were out, but I'm not really using those. I'm gonna try to avoid using those because gesso has this staying power. It really gunks up brushes in a way. This is again while I'm using a utility brush, because it really gunks up brushes in a way that regular paint does not, okay? It's a sealant, remember? So it kind of, you can wash it out, but it kind of just decays the bristles just a little bit more, okay? So I do avoid with gesso my regular painting brushes. This is the one time that I'm moderately precious about that, okay? Again, one of the things I like to do, and now I'm kind of stacking my panels, so I just try to get as many surfaces as possible on painting day, on surface preparation day, okay? And I kind of put them together, line them up, you know, so I just kind of go right across. For those of you if you've ever stretched canvas, you kind of just want to do it all at once. So I'm kind of making these like little blocks right here. And I'm going to take my gesso and I'm going to go all the way across, okay? And kind of prepare those surfaces, okay? So what I'm gonna do is pause the video for now, get all of these surfaces covered, you get an idea of how that works. I'm also gonna put a little bit of PVA size onto the paper. Again, it's gonna be white on white. It's a little bit hard to see, but at least you get an idea of the fact that you can kind of put a ground on there. And then I'll just take you on a little tour of these prepared surfaces before we move over to the palette knife, okay? And again, I'll kind of like show you some different ways that you can add texture to a surface with the palette knife and different materials that you can use. So you can see, you know, how the paint is applied, kind of hold that up for you. Okay, just one moment. Here are the primed panels. I'm gonna zoom out a little bit so you can see I have a whole desk full. It's really nice, kind of gridded out. All the panels, and then this is the PVA size on the paper. And you can see it start to buckle. I think the biggest difference is that you see that it's wet. There's not a lot, you know, it's white on white, that sort of thing. You see I have it taped down. I kind of just let it, I used a little leftover gesso and also the PVA size, which is kind of liquidy. You don't need much of this. Apologies, a bit of a hiccup there. I'm back. Yes, so with the PVA, this is where I was at. You're not really going to see it much. It's very liquidy. When it dries, it's going to keep the paper from buckling. That's kind of what's nice about it. It really stretches it. So you can see this is thin. You can see where there's brush marks. Sometimes I actually go in at the end and I kind of just use a wet brush to smooth out what I did. Just slowly make sure there's not too many lumps. I'll let this dry and then I'll actually sand it down before I get to the next coat, very lightly, okay? This is actually kind of a heavy grit sandpaper. Want something a little lighter than that, sand it down, coat it. Then I'll do that about 3 times to get the surface that I want. It depends on what I'm painting. If I have something with a lot of texture, I'm not gonna worry about it too much. If I have something with a lot of glazes, I'm gonna be a little bit more careful about the ground, okay? So that kind of gives you an idea. Don't let them touch each other when they're drying. They'll get kind of sticky. The other thing is you can see that I cleaned my station, cleaned up where the gesso brush, dip that in water, wipe down where the gesso was. This stuff is really sticky. You can see it's all over my hands. Of course, I've worn an apron because it will basically stain everything. It will stain your clothes. It's very hard to get out, okay? And you can see it's kind of already, it doesn't have a paint-like texture. It's more like plaster kind of in some ways because it's a sealant. So do be careful that you, when you are doing a gesso day or a ground day, that you make sure you clean up your supplies pretty quickly. So next up, I'm gonna show you some of the ways that you can apply paint with a palette knife. I'm just gonna hold the camera, go onto this panel right here, and just kind of show you how you plop it on and different things that you can do. The main thing is putting the paint on thick. You're gonna see it's easier to manipulate the more that you use. It's kind of odd, it feels a little counterintuitive, but that's the way to get the palette knife and all the different textures to work for you. Okay, so I'm gonna try to do this. I'll actually kind of do it. I'm gonna start left-handed and then I'll kind of flip it around. So you can see here, I just grabbed some violet, some yellow, and some alizarin crimson. I'm not really gonna worry that much about what I'm doing here compositionally or color-wise. We're just gonna kind of play with it. I'm gonna start with just standardly scooping and placing paint with the palette knife, and then I'm gonna move to some of these different textured instruments and what they can do. Okay, so it's filming with the left hand, painting with the right. Let's just start with a little bit of this violet. Now watch, as I put it down, one of the things that you want to do is lay it down pretty thickly and allow yourself to place, okay? You can use it thinner too, but it just doesn't work as well. And then you kind of scrape and place, okay? It's very similar to almost like icing a muffin, icing a cake, something like that. One of the things I like the most about using the palette knife on panel is that you can get these really, really sharp edges, okay? Canvas doesn't do this the same way. Okay, so say you're kind of playing around, you've got a shape you want to fill, something along those lines, you just kind of get it down there thickly, scrape, just like you're icing a cake, okay? One of the nice things also too about using a palette knife, they get very clean. So when you grab the next color, you just put that right on and mix on top. It's almost like everything that you were told not to do, you can do with a palette knife, okay? It's kind of fun like that. Sometimes too, I use both the palette knife and a brush, okay? So sometimes I take the edge here. Again, I have used no medium. You don't really have to do that when you have the paint at a high level. And then I've just used, or a thick level, I should say. And then I kind of blend it in spots and let the other places with the texture stand out. So remember, you don't have to just get rid of one for the other. You can use the brush and the palette knife together. Okay, the last little section I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna show you where you can put in. Now this also has a lot to do with whether the paint is transparent or opaque. There's going to be different textures and feelings that you can get from the paint doing different things. Okay, so I'm going to put on that alizarin crimson. Okay, and first utensil that I'm grabbing, this kind of fork-like tool. You can see I'm getting some nice textures there. That's really fun. I just wipe off the excess. I just put that on the palette there, okay? And then I can even grab, I kind of wash these, so these are gonna be a little funky. Wash them, they have gesso on them. But this, I could also go in, maybe play with that on top, just kind of see what that does. Okay, there we go. Maybe kind of, oh, it kind of gives this gridded weave. You can see on this side, again, I'm just showing you all techniques on one. But you can see some are a little bit thinner. Oh, that's really nice. That's kind of fun. And again, taking a brush, okay, and even blending into these areas, just kind of really looking at where this needs to be put together, okay? Got a lot of paint on there. There's no need for medium at this juncture. And again, what is the key? Why does it look like this? Well, panel. Panel gives you that smooth surface and allows you to play around and have clean edges. The amount of paint, okay? So using more paint helps you blend and play with it more. And then thinking about the finesse of the tools, the surfaces, and how they create, and also leaving gaps. You don't need to fill in the entire composition when you're doing this. This is one of those situations where you really just put paint down, mix, play, stand back. Also, don't be afraid to wipe away so you can edit your work as well. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that little journey into surface preparation and also how to use the palette knife, putting paint on thickly. Again, thinking about alternate surfaces, working with panel. So it's kind of just a little bit of a different kind of tutorial, right? We're just learning to play here. Again, the key, getting some good gesso, giving yourself time and setting up. Know that when you do surface prep day, you're probably going to be prepping a bunch of surfaces at once. It's a little bit messy, so be careful. I can already tell I have to be careful. Some of my panels are trying to stick together. Got a little bit of a mess here. So it's time. A lot of times I do surface prep along with maybe working on one canvas or something like that, because there are, again, multiple sessions drying. So I prep the panels, I sand them, or I prep them, let them dry, I sand them, I add another coat. Again, it's a bit messy. You've always got to make sure you're not getting it on yourself or other surfaces that you don't want to be touched with the gesso. So again, you kind of carve out some time, and it might be a couple days. And a lot of times too, I do surface prep and then I work on my drawings and I work on my studies and I get ready for my painting series. Again, playing with the palette knife, just moving paint around, having fun with it. Just because you don't necessarily have a true subject doesn't mean you can't take it seriously and really think about surfaces. And this is there isn't a language here, right? You can look at the gaps, you can look at the thick and thin. Again, using paint in its pure color form, and then blending, again, that big no-no, blending on the surface. That's fun as well. It also gives you an excuse to just pick up some cool things that you can apply paint with. Remember, with the palette knife, it's key to grab a lot of paint, and don't be afraid to use palette knife with the brush. They don't have to be two separate things. You can put this down, brush it in, add more paint, so on and so forth. You're going to find, depending on how much you've been oil painting, acrylic is the same. The more you put on, actually, in some ways, the easier it is to manipulate and get sharp edges, so on and so forth. Also, you get rid of that muddy look because there's so much pigment there, okay? So some of you might find, I know the first time that I used thicker paint, I just loved it. I absolutely loved it. I never wanted to turn back. Now I do. I use thick and thin now, but I had this period where it was just so much paint on the canvas, it was absolutely crazy. Anyway, I hope that was helpful. Again, let me always know if you have any questions, and as always, happy painting.